Hey, listen, today we're talking about travel kettles here on Bean Basics. Oh, hey there. Welcome to Bean Basics with Bob and Michelle. Welcome to sunny Saugatuck, and welcome to our home and kitchen. Hey, listen, today we're talking about coffee and travel. You know, Michelle and I travel a lot. A lot of it has to do with getting to our farm direct farms, but sometimes it has to do with domestic travel too. And I remember the first time Michelle said to me, "Are we bringing coffee?" I panicked and I grabbed this old workhorse, I no longer use it, and put it in the suitcase. Well, that's not very practical. And by the way, I apologize for how dirty this looks, but I'm saving this for another episode on how to descale. Well, anyway, you know, there's a couple different reasons that we need a boiling pot when we travel. When it's domestic, it's more about us staying at a hotel. And babe, I don't know what your thoughts on hotel coffee are, but if I asked you, you would say,
ew.
Ooh, right, exactly. Hotel coffee sucks, right? And so we like to bring our own coffee with us, which means we need to bring our own brewing mechanism. Now today we're not talking about filtration systems or how to pack your coffee or temperature or anything like that. We're just talking about what kind of brew pot you can pack for travel. So let me get started. I've got 3 for us today, and we'll put them all down in the description below. So if you want to link to them and check them out, you can do that. But we're going to look at one called the Narita. We're going to look at one that has a base and it comes off the base. And we're going to look at a collapsible pot. But one thing all these have in common is that they can convert from 120 to 220. I think that's right. Is it 120 to 220? I don't know. Come in close if you don't mind. I'm going to pick up the Narita here. 120 to 240, right? And so this is really great for domestic travel and international travel because it doesn't really matter which voltage systems you have. You can just turn that with a little coin. I like this particular Narita. But before I get into that, I also want to talk about when we do international travel, what do we need? What are the things that we need? Now, when we do domestic travel, it's in a hotel, we're just trying to get ourselves a couple good cups of coffee before we get out the door. And to do that, we only need about a 500 ml pot. A 500 ml pot will do about 2 cups of coffee like this, or 1 big cup of coffee like this. And keep in mind on that domestic travel, all we're looking to do is have a couple of good cups of coffee before we get out in the world, and then we hope we find a good cafe. But on international travel, we're looking for a pot that does a couple other things for us too. You know, sometimes we're in places where the water's not safe. And we do use filtration systems, and this one is called Grail, and I don't know if you can get in a little bit closer, babe, just so everybody can check that out. But we can filter water, and this will take out virus and all kinds of stuff. But even with this, sometimes we're like, well, maybe we'll still boil the water when we're done. And that's one reason we like it. The other one is when we travel, sometimes food sources aren't that safe either. And we might bring a couple of things that aren't that healthy, but will certainly satisfy the stomach, maybe a cup of soup or some ramen noodles. We know that we can pick up sometimes from a local market some potatoes that happen in Nepal. We can get some eggs and boil those. Maybe it's rice. Anyway, any of these pots could do that too, except the collapsible one. I said any, but the collapsible one really can't do food stuff. We'll talk about that in a minute. So the Narita, and all these are built about the same. It's a stainless steel chamber. It has the convertible volts, and they have some kind of plug system. Now this one happens to be an American plug, That's good. That's fine. But of course, in international travel, and we bring these anyway, sometimes we have to bring converter plugs in order to use this properly, right? We can change the electricity by turning that down the bottom, but we'll need these plugs to find the right plug to plug into. The one thing I like about the Narita is it's $30, and it has an auto shut-off, right? Auto shut-off is kind of important. The one thing I don't like about the Narita, if we look at this cord, I find it to be sort of just a standard household cord, and that kind of worries me on the one hand. But on the other hand, when we're making coffee, we're standing right there, you know, because we're maybe grinding the coffee, preparing the filter, and that kind of thing, and we don't need to worry too much about how heavy this cord is. We're right there. So the Narita is simple. One disadvantage is the cord is attached, and so when you go to pour, you're kind of dragging the cord with you. You might have to pull it out of the wall, but I find it's pretty easy just to grab it like this and go ahead and make my pour. All right, well, that's the Narita, $30, pretty simple. The next one is sort of a step up. I couldn't pronounce the brand name. A lot of these come from Asian sources. But the step up on this particular one is that it comes on a base. Okay, so when it comes to pouring the coffee, you get to take it off and pour it as such. On the inside, you would find it to be the same thing. The max mark is 500 mils. This one was particularly delightful. It came with sort of a universal plug, but then it came with this other bobble that sort of allows you to convert from US to Europe by flipping this out right here, or maybe to British even, or French, something like that. Pretty convenient. And I was very excited about this particular pot because, too, it had a very thick wire. Remember how I showed you the other one? It looked sort of like a household. This seemed much more industrial to me, a little safer. But this one has no 120-240 conversion on it. And so what that means is when you plug it into 120, it takes a long time to boil, right? So the Narita will boil in minutes. This one takes almost 10 minutes. Now, if I were to happen to plug this into a 220, I bet it would just take minutes also.
240.
220, you get the idea. But thank you. The other sort of downstroke on this is there's no auto shut-off. So when it reaches the boil, it just keeps on boiling and boiling and boiling and boiling. So that's with base. The other one that really quite intrigued me was the idea of a collapsible kettle, right? And you're like, well, how would that work? Well, let me show you. It's very compact, and it's made out of food-safe silicone, and it comes basically in three parts. There's a handle here, and then you'll also note the 110-220 conversion, and you just pull this pot up and go ahead and slide the handle on the bottom, and on the top plug this on the side and plug it into the wall. This one too had a more industrial plug. I like that. What I didn't like is when I went to pour, even if I had to unplug it from the wall, where this is sticking out in relation to where I pour, it just feels like I can't get a handle on it. And it's so stiff going in here. And keep in mind, you'd be holding a pot of hot water that's collapsible. How do you pull this out? Well, it's really hard, right? So this, I thought, was an answer to a dream, but it wasn't. It does have auto shut-off. And the other thing is, well, I really can't do ramen in here. I couldn't do a cup of soup because how would I get all these little ridges on the inside clean? Almost impossible. The last thing is, as cute and darling as this is, I'm just afraid it's going to fall apart as I'm pouring it at some point, right? It's flexible, it's collapsible. So I liked the idea of this one, but I don't actually like to use it. Now, one thing about when we're boiling water, of course, when we make coffee, we don't put boiling water on coffee. The temperature of coffee water should be somewhere between 195 and 205. And the one thing I do when I travel is I bring a little chef's thermometer with me. And so, often what they'll say is you should use water for coffee that's just off the boil. I think that might be a British term or something like that. But what they mean is let it boil, turn it off, take off the lid, and then take off the lid, and then set this in. And you can kind of keep an eye on the temp, and it'll come down to 206, and then you know you're ready to pour. This doesn't take up a lot of space. The other thing that I really liked about this type of model over the collapsible is that when I looked at the collapsible in the end, I didn't really feel like I was saving that much space. One thing I like about just a standard pot like this is I can take some coffee that we're bringing with us, and when I travel, so it doesn't take up too much room in the suitcase, I can just go ahead and shove some coffee right in there. Now, when we travel, in order to get those couple of cups of coffee first thing in the morning at a hotel, or to be able to brew some later, what we need is about 60 grams a day. All right, so 30 grams would produce 2 of these and 1 of these. And so we like often just to have enough coffee to get us through the first 2 or 3 days, and then we hope to find an adventure, a cafe where we can go buy some other coffee that would be interesting. We just don't want to be stuck with hotel coffee, Well, anyway, that's about all we have to say about a travel pot. But I will say my favorite is this Narita, but you have all the information that I have now. There's so many choices on the internet, on Amazon, and maybe you'll do a little research. But I think the most basic model with the ability to convert the electricity, an auto shut-off, stainless steel interior is about all you need. All right. Why do I like sharing this with you? Well, One Big On in Space is about farm direct. And farm direct means we need to go to the farms and verify that those farms are doing a couple things, right? We want to make sure that they're treating people right and the planet right, and that they're serving their community well. And that means often we're in countries that have limited resources and so on. But we want to make sure to tell you that we'd like to invite you someday to come with us, to go to a farm that BIGGBY Coffee uses. Maybe it would be Nicaragua. Maybe it would be Zambia. Maybe it would be Tanzania. Are you up for the adventure? If you are, what we'd love you to do is to go to the blog site, which is One Big On in Space with 2 G's, go to the contact page and say, I want to go. And we'll put you on a list so that our next trip will contact you. And hopefully you'll come with us. Well, that's about all we have for today. On the next episode, we're going to talk about filtration and how to pack your coffee. But until then, let me leave you with this one note. When you love the world will love you right back. Hey, thanks for joining us. For future episodes, click the subscribe button. Bean Basics is brought to you by OneBigIslandInspace.com with 2 G's.